definitely intrigued by all the local history.
Yeah, I'd like to do more explorations around here in Queens. I actually did a book about Cypress Hills National Cemetery,
Okay.
which is really awesome. Okay, let me get started here. Today is September 29th, 2022. This is Kevin Fitzpatrick. I am in Queens, New York City at the Roy Wilkins Recreation Center. Could you say and spell your name, please?
Jamal Jones, spelled first name Jamaal, last name Jones, Jones.
And you can look right at me, too. What's your title?
I'm a recreation specialist.
What's a recreation specialist do?
We create programming from art to athletics to more mainstream sports to serve the public. We also maintain some of the fitness equipment, and we just engage in the public with current up-to-date fitness programs, and we basically help run the center in a non-managerial capacity, but we kind of just help make things are going smoothly. We handle memberships, and when we're not handling memberships, we work on programming for the public.
And when did you join the agency?
I joined the agency January of 2018.
And what drew you to the parks?
I've always had a thought of how no matter where I'm going in the city, no matter what I'm doing, I see that leaf. I see that parks leaf. So I was aware of how integral the agency is to serving the public, and how whenever there was something interesting going on, there was a Parks Department leaf. Whether it was the marathon and other things, you see that iconic leaf. I was befriended by someone who told me more about the agency and inquired whether I want to serve and work within it, and I've never looked back. I'm most fortunate.
But why this agency? What drew you to the agency that you wanted to be?
Because there's a certain level of intimacy. You find out how membership is doing. They feel comfortable with you, telling you about details about their lives, and especially like on a fitness perspective, you feel fortunate that they're giving you their time. Like I always crack a joke about the membership here. I have a lot of retirees, and they're living a very rich life, and sometimes they're going to South Africa, sometimes they're going to Colombia, so they don't lack options, but they come here to work with us, to use our facility, to engage in our fitness programs. And it gives you a sense of purpose, because people are voluntarily choosing to interact with you other than going to some high-end gym or some other, fitness facility. They choose to come to a Parks Recreation Center.
Is there one area of recreation that you specialize in?
We all have our specialties. I'm primarily in fitness, but I also dabble in art. I'm a great lover of art, everything from classic literature to graphic novels. I love the written word. I'm also, a lover of the written word. I love to read, so right now I'm working on a book program for children, trying to create something different, something, a little bit more academic in my limited expertise, but still something to engage them on that level.
And what's the age range of your customers here at the center?
The customers range from 5 to those that choose not to disclose their age. So I would say we have many patrons in their upper 80s. We are totally engaged in serving the public, serving families. So there are plenty of moments where the children are doing activity, then it's time for mom and dad and the grandparent. So you have to be mindful of creating something for everyone where no one's in the building with nothing to do.
Okay.
There's something for everyone.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about what you've been doing since 2018. Have you always been at this center?
I was in the center, and then we had to float around a little bit to greater serve the public, more or less in this neighborhood. So we had to actively do mask distribution. We had some programming on a very limited basis. And then I had the privilege of working with children in the Learning Bridges program. That was the remote program where the Board of Education created something where children would be in the school 2 days out the week and in a remote center. That was difficult but very fulfilling work. We were working in a capacity that surely was out the realm of what we thought. We were more or less tutors and teachers. The children would have their iPads. We had to make sure they were on their classes. We're checking Google, Google Classroom. It was something you could not do. And you have to have that thought that someone is trusting me with their child.
Okay.
You know, it's there. They would drop their children off to the center, and you're responsible for that child. There's no greater responsibility. You have to be fully engaged.
I want to get back to learning bridges in just a second, but I want to back up a little bit. March 2020, when things went sideways, do you remember the first time you heard coronavirus or a pandemic?
Yes, I try to keep with news on a daily basis, and I first heard about it, I'm guessing that was late fall of 2019. So I'm reading and anxiety's growing, not out of fear, but more or less just about, I often think about history. I remember seeing some older generations with the polio or tuberculosis scar from their inoculation. And I used to think, what's it like to be around an era like that? And what could stop something like that happening? All we have is more technology. We're still human beings living on a planet. So there was the avian flu, we had that one random case of Ebola virus here, and I was just thinking, wow, we were lucky. But inevitably, you know, some say something can happen. So in March, I remember things were getting bad, and always use, funny enough, Starbucks as a reference. I would go to Starbucks and things would be normal. And then one week, you couldn't put your own sugar and creamer in your coffee. They took away that because they were probably, okay, we can't keep having multiple people handle this, we can no longer do that. So that was the first clue, the Starbucks on 34th Street. I was like, okay, we can no longer handle our own. I'm like, that's a good step, they care. And then the seating would be widened. All these little minute steps where it's like, okay, something's going on here. Until finally, that second week of March, I believe, that's when things got really bad. And I remember being at the 72nd Street and Broadway train station on a Sunday at about 8 o'clock, and the station was empty. I had a friend in town from North Carolina, and we both gave each other a look like, we've reached the tipping point now. I think we're at a point where something's about to happen that we were not prepared for, and let's just hope for the best. And that's when it's just the onslaught of media coverage, everybody checking in on their loved ones. Me, myself, I'm taking as much zinc and vitamin D, trying to be proactive, still knowing that nothing's a fail-safe. But I just thought to myself, okay, we reached that moment in history where I could maybe say similar to HIV, but HIV more or less had like a level of intimacy required to spread. This is something different where this is our own Spanish flu or polio era fight we have to fight.
So when the message goes out, don't come to work on Monday, how did you find out? Were you was it on your phone? Was it on your computer?
I had my manager, with great care, a woman named Lynn De Los Santos. She didn't want me taking a long commute. She's like, it's not a good thing. I would rather if you're not. I remember when the centers closed to the public, and I had full confidence in the agency and our superiors. I knew they were receiving real-time data and they were doing the best they can. I was thinking, working with, the Department of Health and Hygiene, but it was just a thing of, I had absolute faith in us, but my thought was, we don't know what we're dealing with, and are we taking the appropriate steps? I was primarily worried about the senior citizens in my life, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So March 2020, you're staying at home. This is in the Bronx?
Yes.
What's the Bronx like during lockdown?
I remember it was very cruel because the weather was fantastic. It was winter left that year so early. As you know, March and April and May, we can get these cold weather spurts. The weather's fantastic and there's no one outside. There's no one outside. Everyone has a mask on. And we were stripped down to bare necessities. And I remember going to the supermarket saying, these are now the most important people on the earth. Forget your job title, forget what you think you do for a living. A lot of us exist in an abstract world of databases. The people that are giving us our food regularly, from the farmer to the butcher, the whole supply chain, these are now the most important human beings on earth. And I remember going to the supermarket and seeing a line and seeing social distancing being practiced. And I'm looking at this open supermarket saying, these are the most important people in the world right now, these supermarkets.
So you're home, and then recreation says we need you. So how long was that?
That was about 2 weeks. I come back here, and we're all just happy to see each other. We all had a little bit of anxiety in terms of just being away from those that you love. We were all looking at each other for answers. Our chiefs were giving us great information. He's a very caring individual, so with social distancing, the mask. And it was just, we're going to get through this, but we have to really pay attention. We really have to pay attention. We cannot take anything for granted. You're seeing the data, so the data speaks for itself. I remember speaking to some of my colleagues and hearing about who they've lost in their family and what's going on, and hearing the different tales of I felt like I had nothing at all to this is the worst I felt in my entire life.
Okay. So this center is closed.
Yes.
What are they doing here? What's this?
We were doing mass distribution and just receiving real-time orders in terms of what we can do right now. We couldn't do public programming, so we were just going out, distributing masks, distributing gloves, and just maybe like serving as a social proxy, like, hey, how are you? We would bump into some of the faces we know, and because the senior community out here is so large, just I remember just wanting to give them as many free masks as possible. That's all we can do.
Where are you handing them out? Where are you doing
We
this?
were handing them out at which is now it's St. Albans Park. It has been given a new name, which escapes me, and Baisley Pond Park. And we would take shifts and just rotate between those park sites and just distribute the mask and the gloves.
And what was the public's reception to getting?
Very happy. Everything's relative to your circumstance. So giving somebody a mask or giving free masks were the most important thing in the world. They were happy. They were asking what our schedule was when we would return, and we would do it, I believe, like 3 times a day, and we would take turns. And the simple task of giving out a mask was significant because
Okay.
they were the most important thing.
So now we're getting into the summer of 2020, school starting. How do you get tapped to do Learning Bridges? What was that?
That was the remote learning program. We have these recreation centers, and it served a great purpose. A lot of us have experience working with children, so it's nothing that intimidates us. We love it, and I think the only difference was we weren't used to working with them so much academically. After school centers, they do check homework, they do provide programming to enrich the children's lives, but now it's like, this is more intimate. I used to always crack a joke how for a brief period, the formal Parks ID should have been 1/3 Board of Education, 1/3 ACS, and 1/3 Park, because we were hybrid employees. We were hybrid employees, but we had to do what we had to do. We were still serving the city of New York. We had to serve a purpose. And, you know, I would often think of, there are other frontline workers who are going through a whole lot worse experiences. I remember the transit department, they have those interactive, kind of like a poster, but it's more like a digital display, and it was showing the transit employees that died. It was very sobering. The motormen, the bus drivers, and it was just a thing of like, look who these people, it's just shut up and do what you have to do. Like, that's all.
So when Learning Bridges is up and going, how old are the kids? What grades are they that you have?
The kids ranged from 5 to 13. We had mostly children between 5 to 10. The children were great. You could tell they had like a lot of energy that they had to let go. Being locked up in the classroom was a bit difficult for them, but it looked like that small social setting really helped them. And you know, they have no point of reference of what they were going through. They're hearing the news, so it was like almost like a self-contained, happy little bubble. It was very fulfilling.
And did you have the same kids every day, or is it a mix of?
We had the same kids in our building, but their schedules would shift, so we more or less had like 2 groups depending on who would go to school on day A and who would go to school on day B. So it was like the same group of children that would more or less rotate during the schedule.
Okay. Were you also doing recreation with them too?
We were doing recreation. We had to let them get some of that energy out. We would go into the field. That was a challenge. Recreation while utilizing social distancing. We would play, we had the sanitizer for all the equipment, for all the balls, and we would play these creative games where soccer, but with social distancing, or this program was social distancing. And we would actively wipe everything down with peroxide after every session. We all worked with a thought of, we have to take care of these children. This small role we play, we have to take care of these children. By taking care of these children, we're keeping a household safe.
But you're talking like kindergartners all day here.
Yes.
I mean, how did you keep them engaged?
Just saying, I see you, asking them about is their classwork done, asking are their special projects done, more or less bothering them in the most appropriate way. And then also they would see their classmates, and that helped the role. Also, teachers did a fantastic thing with remote learning. They would, in their classroom time, even though it was remote, the teachers did a fantastic job of calling the children out by their name. So to let the children know, I see you, how are you, what are you doing? So it just wasn't teachers saying, hey class, how are you? It was name by name. So while that child had the tablet in their hand, they know that teachers looking at them, the teachers would call them. Everyone did their part to try to inject some normalcy in this situation.
I've been to other rec centers and I met others that worked on learning bridges, but what's your opinion? Why do you think rec staff are so good at this?
We have to be flexible. We have to be flexible. Often crack a joke, you can't say that's not in my job description. You have to be flexible. You never know what you have to do during the course of the day. And then you have to know how to interact with all age groups. I'm a father, so children, they come easy to me. So it's the flexibility in interacting with every segment of the public. It gives you a tool set that you don't take for granted.
Was the facility okay? Did you have Wi-Fi?
We had Wi-Fi. That particular program was not here. That was in Detective Keith Williams, which is about 2 miles from here. We had Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi was of great quality. Sometimes we had some technical issues, but more or less it worked pretty well.
Okay. So as we're getting a little bit past the lockdown era and the learning bridges era, when is the center reopening to the public? When is that happening?
So the center, we were more or less given different assignments. So around April, we start hearing that we might be coming out of the wilderness. I then began to work at the Al Orta Recreation Center in Flushing. And so we're just more or less wiping things down, talking about what we're going to do. And we were more or less in a holding pattern of, okay, we have to get back to working, but what's our new normal? The big question was, what's our new normal? So programming couldn't resume, and then I believe it was in August that rec centers finally opened back up, and we had a reservation-based system where we had to limit the number of bodies, so you will go online and create a reservation. And that felt, funny enough, you never know how things are going to affect you till they take place. It felt good because, like, okay, there might be a slight uptick in positivity instead of just coronavirus numbers. Just seeing the public again really felt great.
Okay.
We had to implement a lot of controls, but it felt great.
Did you ever feel like your health was at risk going to work?
No. I knew it was. I was certainly never cocky. I was aware of stories of people who contracted coronavirus, and they were fit individuals, and they felt horrible. I knew it was always there, but I was very careful, and always thought, well, maybe there's a time I did contract it and I was asymptomatic. But I was mindful of it, but never scared. Why, I do not know. It was a very scary time. I'm certainly not bulletproof, but I was never particularly that scared, no.
So let me ask you, when you joined Parks, did you consciously think about, I'm becoming a public servant?
Yes.
What does that feel like? What does that mean to you?
It means that you have to be patient. There are moments that are simply not about you. And you have to provide a service that, to some extent, is almost free. Your taxes pay for it. I mean, you do have to pay for membership, but I always think you're providing the best quality service at the lowest dollar. So I was very mindful of that. None of us are perfect, but I had a great colleague who used to have a line, "I work for you." And no one can always think with that philosophy. We're as human as anybody, but I did think with that attitude, yeah.
And now the pandemic comes down. I mean, did you feel as like you're an essential worker as well too?
To some extent, yes. I think we are. Mind you, I'm definitely keeping perspective, not like the police department or the fire department or people maintaining infrastructure. But I think to a smaller extent we are. We're providing that much needed social element that helps keep mental health well.
Do you think the agency learned anything from the pandemic?
Yes, probably how to respond in a pandemic. I'm pretty sure there are training manuals and there's been plenty of things written, but you never know until you're in the midst of that scenario and all the specifics of what you're dealing with. I think the agency really did. We would get different orders, never anything conflicting. We never felt like the boat was rudderless. I have complete confidence that it did, and I think there's a lot of high-end dialogue going on as they were looking at the numbers and reacting in real time to it. So I had complete confidence in that.
Okay. Do you think the agency has gotten back to its pre-pandemic levels?
Yes, but they're keeping an eye on things.
Okay.
In terms of pre-pandemic levels, in terms of serving the public, yes. But I think everyone knows anything can change at any given moment. So it's pre-pandemic levels for the public's eye, but in terms of, managers and administrative folks, they're keeping an eye on things. Everybody's still not taking anything for granted.
Is the recreation membership back to what it was before?
Yes, it is. People are happy to come back in. They're happy to engage in programming. Pretty much now everyone's received word that we're open to serve you in the previous capacity, so I believe it has.
Okay. So at any time during the last 2 years, were you ever self-reflective of thinking, I'm living through history?
Absolutely.
How so?
We were shut down and locked down. Like I mentioned earlier, we were in a moment where the supermarket became the most important thing in your life. It wasn't social media, it wasn't trends, it wasn't this. We were stripped down to our bare necessities. This is history. And like I said, I've always thought about everything from the Black Death to, the various plagues, and just, we escaped a couple of bullets, like I said, with the avian flu and, the Ebola virus, but this time, we weren't so lucky. I believe coronavirus did surpass the Spanish flu death total. So my mother lost a lot of friends. She's fine, but that was another aspect of it. I didn't have time to worry about myself because I'm more or less checking on her mental health and her physical health. She lost a lot of friends, a lot of members of her church, and everybody has the same story. If you're here and you're well, you're lucky. That's it. You're simply lucky, Do
you think it changed you at all in the last 2 years?
I think it has. It's changed everyone. If you said it hasn't, I don't think you're being truthful to yourself. I certainly find myself even more patient. Nothing approaching Zen-like, but
Sure.
Just the small things don't matter. Small arguments don't matter. If I kind of cracked the joke how when things started getting better, you could almost see people resorting back to the same petty behaviors, but nah, things have gotten better. And I think I have changed in terms of just maybe valuing relationships more. We all say we value them, but there are moments where you do take people for granted, and I think that's what's happened. I learned to value my relationships even more.
Did it affect you to the point of I have the night off, I can either read a book, watch Netflix, or go out with my friends? Would you ever come to that kind of decision of
It would be less Netflix because I think we all binged on so much. I think I heard at one time, I can't remember the source, but I think during the peak, Netflix was like responsible for like 40% of all internet bandwidth. But yeah, it was more or less about if you could find a good place, a safe place, just seeing your friends and a good book. Yeah.
Okay. So people might not be looking at this for many, many years, maybe 50 to 100 years. Is there something you want to say for the historical record to put in that history book that you were a witness to, or something that you want to say about this era?
We persevered. We did what we had to do, and we relied on our relationships, professional and, social. We were stripped down to our bare components, and we were reminded of what matters, and that's how we got through it.
Were you relying on your perky coworkers?
I find myself, I'm surrounded by some great people. There's an abundance of leadership here. And you saw how much they cared about us. Like, if any one of us slipped for a moment, oh, you have to get farther away. Like, there was almost like this very pragmatic, maternal atmosphere. So, yeah, I did rely on them, and we all relied on each other.
Because others have mentioned like this perky spirit.
Yes.
That there's like this esprit de corps among people.
It is. Sometimes we laugh at the Parky label, and but whether you choose to call it or not, it's certainly there. It's certainly there. We look out for each other. We share the workload. We don't want anyone doing like a disproportionately difficult task. It's certainly there.
I mean, you're in this beautiful facility. Does it feel like the community is coming back full force, or are they kind of?
They're coming back full force.
Okay.
They're coming back full force. The basketball programs, the public that uses the pool, pickleball, fastest growing sport in the U.S. That community is huge here. So they're a very passionate membership group. So it is. I believe the numbers are growing, and we're back fully. We are.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate
wonderful.
the invitation. Thank you.
Yeah, I just have one more question. I need to take a picture of you.